I want to get off the beaten path and move beyond politics to talk about an actually important issue that's not getting a lot of coverage, but there actually is a lot of research on it. If you're a married woman or you're a man in particular, listen to me for a minute. There's new research out. The American Enterprise Institute has done some, Pew has done some. It's been compiled in various articles I've read. I've talked about this previously about isolation, in particular, how isolation in the country post-COVID is disproportionately affecting men more than women. It's affecting everyone, to be clear, but disproportionately it's affecting men. To give you a scope of this, 1 in 5 single men in this country say they do not have a close relationship with anyone outside their family. 2 in 5 married men say the same thing. Now, if you're like me, and I'll just be openly honest, I have this level of guilt. I take time off. I spend time with friends. I know I've mentioned before, I have friends that come over on Sunday nights, bourbon and cigars. I actually want to build someplace in the backyard for people to come because I've mentioned this and people drive past my house. People show up uninvited. It's kind of weird, but I appreciate I'm that accessible. But at the same time, for invited guests on a Sunday night, have them come over just because I know I need it. And there was a time that I didn't know I needed. And I still feel guilty for spending that time. I feel guilty being on a golf course for several hours with friends. But I know I need it, and my wife knows I need it. And the data out there now overwhelmingly shows that men actually do need out-of-family friendships, and men in particular are isolating themselves. And for years and years, there's been this tie between isolation and mental health issues. We now know there are physical problems as well. And scientists for a long time weren't sure if it was causation or correlation. They assumed, well, men with these sorts of things are isolated. But now they actually do know that the isolation is causation. So, for example, men who are regularly isolated and do not hang out with other men as friends just to talk and be friends, they have higher rates of cancer, higher rates of diabetes, higher rates of heart disease, higher rates of arthritis. In particular, they have higher rates of Alzheimer's and dementia. Isolation breeds mental health problems. Isolation breeds mental problems with Alzheimer's and dementia. Isolation breeds problems with stress levels. It breeds problems with cancer and diabetes and high blood pressure and obesity. Isolation has a real impact on people's health. If you look at this theologically, just real quick, God created Eve because he said man was not meant to be alone. God walked in the Garden of Eden with Adam. It was not just a yelling down. It was not a one-sided thing. It was a physical relationship. And we all, I think, delude ourselves sometimes into thinking, well, I'm in constant contact with people. I wish I wasn't. I was at a restaurant yesterday having breakfast, and I had to talk on the phone the entire time I was eating. People wouldn't leave me alone. I had text messages, I had phone calls, and I couldn't put them down. There weren't things I could just let go of. I had to take the calls. It literally was on the phone the entire time chewing. And I thought, man, I wish I was unplugged. And we all get to that point sometimes where we wish we were left alone, but actually we need the physical interaction with people. We actually do. The science and the data says we really do need this physical interaction. We need to be face-to-face with other people outside our family. We have to take time to build friendships. What's so interesting is the data also shows before COVID, about 52% of men said they had at least 5 regular friendships, meaningful friendships outside their family. It's now 19% post-COVID. 19%. That's a huge drop in the number of men who have at least 5 close friends. Now, I am not someone, I hear people all the time. I was talking to someone the other day, and they get together regularly with friends they've had their entire lives. I don't have a single friend I hang out with from grade school, from high school, from college, from law school. I don't. And I had a group of friends in a small group in my church, and they've all moved away. And several years ago, it was actually right after COVID, my buddy David Cannon actually reached out to me one night and just texted me. He says, what if you had a vacation? I can hear it in your voice. And I had not had a vacation since Christmas of 2019, and this is June of 2020. Had not taken a day off work. In fact, my office during COVID locked me out of the office because I was still doing so much and traveling so much and working so much. They didn't want me in the office. They wanted to try to force me to not come to Atlanta, to force me not to do stuff. And I still worked. I went to work every day. And so random guy who I didn't know very well was like, I'm not your dad, but you need a vacation. And then the next day, my wife told me the same thing. And then I went to a meeting in Atlanta. I was meeting with Jason Dees at Christ Covenant in Atlanta. My buddy Josh Youssef from seminary was there. He runs Help the Persecuted. And I opened the door. He looked right at me. He said, when have you had a vacation? And I was like, God's trying to tell me something. And then Jason Dees, in the course of our conversation, said the same thing. And I finally, that weekend, I just went away for 3 days by myself. Went up to the North Georgia mountains. It's how I fell in love with Lake Burton in Northeast Georgia. And just didn't have the internet, had to dwell in my thoughts, had to go exploring when the boredom set in to check out the town of Clayton, went fly fishing, sat on the lake, had some bourbon, had a cigar, and just realized I could feel the stress. And it was really at that moment I made the resolution, at least once a month I need to hang out with friends. And it turned into this tradition on Sunday nights now, where it started out with my friend Philip, and then other friends came, and now it's 3 or 4 of us. We hang out regularly. Occasionally people just show up, which is random and awkward because I cook the food and sometimes there's not enough, and I wish people wouldn't do that. But nonetheless, people need that community, and I don't want to shoo friends of mine away who want to come because I'm more and more mindful how isolated men in particular are. And men in particular, typically, the way you're raised, you have this sense of guilt because you got to take care of your family. I mean, my wife gets up with the kids. She gets them ready for school. She helps them with the homework. She does all the laundry. I go to the grocery store for us. I make sure everyone is fed at night. Sometimes in our house, because of schedules, I'll go to like 3 different restaurants and pick up food because one kid wants one thing, one kid wants another. My wife wants something else. I don't know what I want. I get them fed, and then I got to go back to work once they're in bed. I was at my office the other night until 11 p.m. I had to make cinnamon rolls for my kids' school. So I made the cinnamon rolls. I took and they had to rise for a little while. I had to go do the grocery shopping. My wife was helping them with homework. I got everybody fed. I got them in bed. I got the cinnamon roll dough in the refrigerator. I went to the office to finish work. Didn't leave the office until after 11 o'clock at night, and then had to be up at 5 to roll out the cinnamon rolls and get everything done. I was exhausted. And I think a lot of men do that. We put burdens on ourselves to take care of our family. Oftentimes we want to show people we love them by the amount of work we're doing. Sometimes your family resents it, and that's a whole nother topic. But we do so much, we feel guilty when we step out for a moment. And I've had to work to overcome that sense of guilt. And my wife now recognizes it's actually good for me as a father and as a husband to unplug from my family for a little while. And sometimes that takes resolution. And I speak as a man in the problem that the data shows men are having, but this is a problem with women as well. But women are still more likely to have a peer group where they share and confide things. Men keep everything bottled up. We don't share. We don't have other men we trust. We don't build relationships with other men. I've got friends of mine I can sit on my front porch with, and we can watch something or just sit there in silence for 5-10 minutes. And just being in the physical company of a friend actually does you good, even if you have nothing to say. But oftentimes you build those times up. You do have the vent sessions where you can just unload about your burdens, and you're not looking for resolution. And, oftentimes women want to find a resolution, or men want to find a resolution, and it's usually the opposites. You'll be married to someone and you just want to vent, and your spouse wants to offer the solutions. You don't need the solutions. You know the solutions. You just want to vent. Or you're in the opposite roles. And sometimes 2 guys can just get together and both vent, and they don't need the solution. But the venting, the sharing each other's burdens is necessary. God says to cast your worries on him, let him take care of them. And you can, but also having a friend to share the burden with is a meaningful way to improve not just your mental health, but your physical health. The data is now too compelling that we have these situations where men are more isolated, and it's impacting not just their mental health, but their physical health. So if you're a married woman, encourage your husband to just go out for a beer with a friend, or if he doesn't drink, go play golf, go shoot guns, have meaningful interaction with another man. If you're a husband, encourage your wife to make sure she has time with her friends on the calendar. If you're a single man, find a group to get involved with. You are extremely isolated if you're a single man right now and it's impacting your development of your relationships, it's luring you into things like pornography that aren't actually healthy for you and your relationships. Find a group of people in a cause you care about. Find a church, find a community group, find something to plug yourself into. Force yourself to do it. It's outside my comfort zone to hang out with strangers. I don't like to hang out with people. I don't like to hang out with friends, but I make myself do it because it's good for me. It's good for my well-being. And all the data now shows it. You have got to force yourself to interact in a physical way, and don't delude yourself that being on the phone, text messaging, group chats are the same thing, because all the data overwhelmingly shows it's not. You want to improve the mental health issues that are happening in this country, including in your own household, hang out with friends. It actually is simple medicine that works.